What a Monday night in the NHL. This is Stanley Cupdate, product of the NHL Wraparound podcast for Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. Vic Morren and hello, Neil Smith, back home in South Carolina. How are you?
I'm good after 12 hours in the car and 2 dogs and about 3 or 4 stops, and I'm here.
Well, you'll be happy to know that the brand didn't suffer with me going solo on Monday, which was pretty hard to believe because we're always better as a pair.
I don't know about that. Maybe you're better off solo. Maybe you've had enough of me.
Well, to our listeners, don't send those cards and letters on this one. Anyway, let's sum up Monday night because it was the absolute essence of what Stanley Cup hockey is all about. 4 one-goal games, including a pair of overtime winners, one coming from a legend and another from a journeyman. And add to that, history almost rewrote itself in Los Angeles with only a last-minute goal by the Kings saving this headline. From Miracle on Manchester to the crap out in crypto. So what an incredible evening it was. And we're going to break it all down.
And you get so many of these. This is what makes the playoffs great. You get so many great nights like last night, and there'll be a lot more ahead.
Probably starting on Tuesday. And of course, we'll be back on Wednesday to report on it. Anyway, let's start with the Washington-Montreal game. And the Caps take a 1-0 series lead after winning that opener in overtime. Logan Thompson plays his first game since April the 2nd. But the headliner here, Alex Ovechkin, 2 goals and an assist, including the overtime winner. It was his first career Stanley Cup overtime goal in 45 overtime games that he has played in.
And just to emphasize what you said, Vic, 2 goals and an assist, 3 points, and Washington wins 3-2. So he was involved in all 3 Washington goals. He got the first one, he got the overtime goal, and he assisted on the second one. So what a night for a guy 40 years old.
Did the first goal that he scored to open the game look familiar?
It looked like a replay from UBS Arena.
Tom Wilson down the right boards, release point on the pass, almost identical, and the release point of Ovi's shot, which was that hard wrist shot. It was like a carbon copy. And by the way, it's posted on X this morning under our NHL Wraparound account.
Well, that's great. I think it beat him. It beat the goalie in a different spot. I think it beat him on the blocker side, whereas it beat Sorokin, I think, on the other side or right down the middle. I'm not sure. But nevertheless, it was certainly very reminiscent of that record-breaking goal.
Let's go a little bit deeper into this game because for large portions of this night, the Canadiens looked like they were awestruck of the Capitals. They had 7 players that had never played a playoff game before. I thought the first 10 to 12 minutes, they did a lot of standing around, particularly in their own defensive end, kind of just watching the Capitals skate, and didn't offer up a lot of resistance. And it was only the goaltending of Sam Montembeault that actually kept the Canadiens in this game for a long period. Realistically, they didn't even threaten until midway through the third period when they got their first goal of the game on a little bit of a scramble from out in front, Cole Caulfield getting that one. And that seemed to flip this entire third period because after that, it was a full-on assault by the Canadiens. And Nick Suzuki winds up tying this game with 4:15 left in regulation. And you could see the Canadiens' confidence continuing to build as this game went on.
And I think you're going to see that in game 2 because that's what a young team does. Suddenly they'll be told by their coaches, especially Marty St. Louis, who's got lots of playoff experience, come on, guys, you can beat this team. You can beat this team. And they're going to think they can beat them now. They're going to believe in it because they came so close. They're one shot away from going up 1-0.
But once we get into the overtime, you talk about small details that matter, and you've got to go back. You've got to look at the sequencing of what happens. And Caden Gooley takes an unforced icing. And with that icing, it forces the Canadiens to have Patrick Laine and Ivan Demidov on the ice for the defensive zone faceoff. That's not something that you want.
No, that's for sure. And that's a great observation by you, and a great point that you don't want unforced errors in the playoffs.
So what happens on the ensuing faceoff? It's a 50-50 puck in the dot. The Capitals gain possession. Plays made out front to Ovechkin from Anthony Beauvillier. And where are Laine and Demidov? Distant from any Capital players, not part of the defense that's trying to prevent this goal. And that's how the Caps win game one.
That's simple. But I think the young Canadiens team will gain a lot of confidence through the effort that they put forth and the fact that they came so close.
The Habs will try to even that series on Wednesday, game time, 7 p.m. Let's head over to St. Louis, where the Jets take a 2-0 series lead, another hard-fought game, 2-1 over the St. Louis Blues. I think, this is the second straight game now that the Blues have been right there and they fall short. This game was a lot stiffer, I thought, than game one. Only 44 total shots in the game. Much more physicality. Even the Shen brothers banged heads a couple of times in this one. And if you're Jim Montgomery, your club has played well. And I think in a lot of series, they could be no worse than tied, even up 2-0. What's your message to the team?
I think similar to what we just said about Montreal. Guys, you can beat this team, especially in our barn, and we're just going to take this a shift at a time, a period at a time, a game at a time. But the Blues know they could have won one of those games. I really thought, actually, that they might win game 2 and go home tied 1-1. But there's no way that, in my opinion, that Winnipeg's going to go in and close this team out in 4 games. This series is going to go back to Winnipeg. I think St. Louis it got what it takes to make this a longer series.
Mark Scheifele and Jimmy Snuggerud swapped goals in the first period, with the winner coming at 1:43 of the third. Kyle Connor, once again, finding a soft spot in coverage, which he has become an absolute master at, gets alone in the slot, bangs home a pass from Cole Perfetti. This is one of the great goal scorers in the NHL, which, if you don't follow the league closely and you don't know a lot about the Winnipeg Jets, this is a guy to pay attention to.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he is terrific. You said it right. He's a great goal scorer. And when him and Scheifele are out there together, it's really something to watch. Scheifele, of course, the more physical guy. Kyle Connor finds those soft spots, and he's got a quick release, like on that winning goal. Boy, it's on his stick and off his stick within a split second.
Even though the shot totals were not that high, the goaltending with Jordan Binnington for the Blues and Connor Hellebuck for the Winnipeg Jets was very good. However, all 4 goals, including Snuggerud's, which beat Hellebuck, high blocker, have been upstairs. And it's clear to this point that the Blues are making a point of going high. And even if Winnipeg survives this series, which I still think they're going to, and you pick them as well, this is something that is going to be in everybody else's scouting report as the playoffs continue.
Well, absolutely. But I mean, there's no other place to score on Hellebuck but up high. I mean, he's got the whole bottom of the net covered, and that's the only place you're going to beat him. You've got to pick those 2 upper corners. To be fair, you probably can beat any goalie if you can find those 2 upper corners, and even Vasilevsky, or name whoever you want. But I think that the positive thing is that Hellebuck never gets beat low. And so it's tough to get those shots up into those high corners. And that's where the Jets have got to make sure guys don't have enough time to be able to pick those high corners.
The thing also is if you go back and you look at those 4 goals, it's pretty hard to fault them on any of them.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys are in the NHL. They can do that stuff. But Hellebuck, I think, is still an amazing goaltender. And Winnipeg's going to go as far as Hellebuck can get them.
Extra day off in this series, and it will resume at the Enterprise Center in St. Louis on Thursday, 9:30 Eastern Time start. Did you manage to see these games in the West last night?
Well, if you remember, sir, I was driving. I got in at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And so I was home for the start of these games. Yes, and I did get to see Dallas, Colorado, and LA and Edmonton.
And we're not going to tell any state troopers through the Carolinas that you were sneaking peeks while you were driving on the interstate.
I was thinking about that. Is it against the law to have your phone on a mount with a game going? And it's not, because it could be for the passenger, it could be for the kids, it could be anything. I mean, you're not supposed to obviously be looking at it, but there's nothing that can be done. Actually, Vic, when you're as old as we are, all you need to do is hear the game. You don't need to really see it. We've seen so many that you know exactly what's going on just by listening to the play-by-play guy.
You were hands-free also, Houdini.
Yeah.
All right, so in the first of the 2 late games, the Dallas Stars get off the mat. They beat the Colorado Avalanche in overtime 4-3, and this was a much more complete game than Saturday by the Stars. I still was not impressed, even though Peter DeBoer was, and his opinion is certainly worth more than mine. But nonetheless, I didn't think they were good on Saturday, and I thought they were very good last night. The Stars clearly appeared to be more into this game, and perhaps this was one of these situations that the reality of going down too put your desperation in motion, and they played like it last night.
Yeah, and I think that this is a mature team. This is not a rookie team, although they have some tremendous young players on Dallas. But this was a team that knew the situation that they're in, and they knew that they had to get game 2. They cannot go to Colorado having lost both their home games. So they were able to do it, albeit in overtime.
First goal of the game by Dallas, after Nathan McKinnon scored already his 3rd in this series, came off the stick of Tyler Seguin, who I thought looked terrific last night. And with Jason Robertson out, his addition coming back into the lineup is a tremendous boost for the Stars.
Well, and he's a tremendous player, and he's had a lot of rest. And when I say that, I'm not saying that tongue-in-cheek. He really has. He's had a lot of rest. He's been off for a long time. So he's got wheels that most guys in the NHL don't have at this point after 82-game schedule. And you top that with the fact that he is a star player to begin with. And I thought he looked terrific as well.
We talked about 2 overtime winners at the start of the show, one from a legend, one from a journeyman. What about Colin Blackwell getting the game winner in this one? And this is what makes the playoffs great, because you can have superstar players that fall on their faces and guys that you've never heard of stand up and become major factors. Even if it's just for a game, they still leave their mark on a series.
And they can leave their mark on history, as we know with Stefan Matteau, a journeyman player, certainly. But Colin Blackwell, I was so surprised. That puck just sat there in no man's land, and he jumped on it and was able to put that into the net after he went down the ice and took one shot, then found that puck sitting for him again and was able to lift that in.
It was a goal scorer's goal because he went up high on Mackenzie Blackwood.
Yes, he did. And Blackwell on Blackwood.
Blackwell was a late insertion into the lineup to replace Maverick Bourque. So good move by Peter DeBoer. This series heads to Denver for games 3 and 4, and the third game will be on Wednesday at 9:30 Eastern. Shall we expect to see Gabriel Landeskog in the lineup for the Avalanche for this one? He has been activated off LTIR. He actually did take warm-ups. I was going to be surprised, frankly, if he did play in game 2, because nothing is going to make the Denver crowd more crazy than to see him come back and play his first game in front of them.
Well, absolutely. This is a guy who's, other than Joe Sakic, this is the only captain to hoist a Stanley Cup for the Avalanche, and he did it back in 22, and then has never been on the ice for a game since. And if he does it in game 3, it'll be something to see how the crowd reacts. But I'll be more interested in to see how he can play when missing this much time. And is he a big contributor, or where do they put him in the lineup, and so on? I know what kind of player he was when he went down injured and has had this time off. But what kind of player is he now? What is it, 3 years later?
I think it will be 1,033 days since his last NHL game. And even though he did have a 2-game conditioning stint in the AHL with the Colorado Eagles, NHL, and particularly Stanley Cup hockey, a lot different than AHL.
Well, absolutely. But he is a gifted guy, obviously, and he probably can return to form. But it'll be interesting to watch, because it's something that we haven't seen before. I mean, I got to see Mario Lemieux, as did you, come back from cancer and dominate the league after that, after missing a lot of time. But I don't remember seeing a guy miss 3 calendar years and then come back into the lineup.
But there could be something to be said for mere adrenaline to help get him through those first couple of games, that you're there, you're so jacked up because you've had all this pent-up energy for so long waiting to get back in the lineup, and you know that this is the end of this long journey to return to action.
Well, and I said that Tyler Seguin was very well rested since he's been off since early December. That pales in comparison to the amount of time off that Landeskog has had. So let's see what happens in game number 3.
The last game of the night, the LA Kings and the Edmonton Oilers opening their series at Crypto.com Arena. Where do you want me to start here?
Start with the beginning of the game. It was a bizarro game.
The Kings absolutely had their way for the better part of 2 periods. And when I say the better part, it's 40 minutes less 6 seconds. They had a 4-0 lead. They were absolutely suffocating the Oilers. They couldn't move. They were heavy. They were finishing their checks. Their defensive layers were terrific. Their gap control was outstanding. It was all going for them. The Oilers had 9 shots up until Connor McDavid setting up Leon Draisaitl with 6 seconds left in the second period. And you're thinking, okay, you know what? It's 1 goal, but 3-goal deficit in the third. It's too much for them to overcome. But I think, as we saw with New Jersey and Carolina, with the Hurricanes maybe taking their foot off the gas a little bit late in the second and early in the third, we certainly saw this on Monday night, because the Oilers get to within 4-2 early in the third period. But then they go shorthanded by 2 men. Zach Hyman with a check to the head on Brant Clark, and then Jake Wallman with a retaliatory rough on Philip Deneau. So lack of discipline. They go down 2 men, and the Kings score to make the score 5-2. And you're thinking, okay, this one's probably over at this point. So subsequently, Wallman flips the puck out of the rink. The Oilers challenge, and then they're down 2 men again, but they wind up killing this disadvantage off. And this kind of sets the stage there. Corey Perry had made the score 5-3. And with Stu Skinner pulled, McDavid sets up Zach Hyman with 2:04 left. And then with 1:28 to go, McDavid splits through Mikey Anderson and Anze Kopitar and puts a nifty shot past Darcy Kemper to tie the game. I had recorded the end of the last two games. And when I looked at the time on the file, when I started watching again this morning, I was like, God, there's way too much time left on this that something had to have happened. And it was absolutely stunning that the Oilers had come off the mat to tie this game.
Tough for the Kings because now the Oilers are believing in themselves. If they could have kept their foot on their throat and gotten a bigger win in this game, it might have decimated the Oilers' hopes to win game two back there in LA. But now the Oilers are thinking, gosh, if we hadn't screwed up the first two periods, we would have won. So, let's go.
So then what happens? You think the Oilers have all the momentum in the world. They're going to at least get this game to overtime and give the Kings 15 minutes or so to think about blowing a 4-0 and 5-2 lead. And then just 46 seconds after McDavid ties the game, Phillip Danault with a little knuckleball that gets past Skinner with 42 seconds left in regulation. And I don't want to say the expletive that I said when this went in. I'm not a fan of either club, but just the initial reaction was holy, and you fill in the blank here.
Yeah, holy moly.
Yeah, it wasn't holy moly.
Nobody had to know. I don't know. They had to know that somebody had to have Danault. You know what I mean? Danault?
I do know. But Warren Fogle with a pretty good screen in front also.
Yeah, no, it was a great screen in front. He jumped up and down. Skinner never saw that puck. He had no idea where it was, but it was a great play by Moore back to Danault. Good on Danault to get into the zone. Uncovered. Somebody should have been with him. And, it was amazing. What a game, though, to be at. I'm sure it was exhilarating to be in the arena for that game.
It was almost the reverse Miracle on Manchester.
Yes.
Where in 1982, the Kings came back from 5-0 against the Oilers, and Edmonton almost turned the trick here.
They almost did, but almost only counts in horseshoes.
A few sidebars to this game also. A lot of piss and vinegar in this one, particularly early in the third period, where there seemed to be scrums after every single whistle. And even though Craig Button kind of denied this on our playoff preview, you wonder if there was still some residual carryover from the Darnell Nurse Quentin Byfield incident in the last week of the season that perhaps carried over into this game.
I don't know that one incident carries over, but the LA Kings have a lot to prove. They got to wash out straight losses in the playoffs to the Edmonton Oilers. They want to get that monkey off their back.
What do they say? Familiarity breeds contempt. And not only do these two teams play in the same division, they are frequent playoff opponents, now having met for 4 straight years. So already there's a little bit of acid in here even before a playoff series gets started.
And for those that don't like the playoff format, this is why. Because nobody wants to see the same two teams go at it in the first round and get knocked out year after year.
Yeah, but in this case, when you got what you got last night, and I hate to say it because I happen to agree with you, but when you see a game like this one last night, you're kind of glad that they're meeting again.
You are, but at the same time, though, Vic, I mean, you'll be glad right now for this part, but it's too early for one of these two to get knocked out. That's my point, is that like the same two meet again. I mean, Tampa, Florida, somebody's going to get knocked out. Well, you can go on and on. Dallas, Colorado, somebody's going to get knocked out. It just doesn't seem fair that the same two teams meet for 5 straight years.
Every team in the playoffs, these are good teams. So there's going to be feelings hurt any way you slice it. Even in the 1-8 matchups, the 8s are good hockey clubs.
Well, They are in the West. I'm not sure you'd call Montreal a good NHL team.
All
I
right.
think that they're a rebuilding NHL team. But no, I get your point. I get your point. And the reason why we are bemoaning a team getting knocked out is because we think that in the East, we said this, in the East, we have 5 legitimate Stanley Cup contenders. And in the West, we think we have 6 legitimate Stanley Cup contenders. And the only reason we don't count New Jersey is because of the injuries to Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton, who's back now. But yeah, I agree. Somebody's got to get knocked out in the first round when you're saying you have 12 out of 16 are contenders.
A couple of player notes I want to talk about before we move to Tuesday's schedule. Trent Frederick returned to the Edmonton lineup and certainly adds a little bit of edge for them. But one of the players that you really noticed for the Kings, Andrei Kuzmenko, who was playing with the fire and the touch that he did when he had his 39-goal rookie season with the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, somebody's got to him, and I think it's Anze Kopitar who's got to him, and say, he is just looking great. What a great pickup he's been. And this is, as a GM, these are one of these things where you got to have some luck. You got to be, skilled at your job, at recognizing who you need and talking to enough people about the player. But then you got to get lucky and that he falls in place perfectly on your team, the way that Pierre-Luc Dubois has done for the Washington Capitals and the way that Kuzmenko's doing in the playoffs for these guys. I mean, I remember making trades while I was GM, and the guys came in at the trade deadline and worked out great for us, just fell right into place. There's a lot of luck involved with that too. You've gotten the right guys and the dice has come up 7s.
Before we leave this game, one thing that I did want to discuss is I think there's good and bad for both teams to take from this one. And certainly the Kings having the resilience to get that game-winning goal after almost a disastrous comeback from the Oilers. But perhaps in addition to that, they also draw on that 4-0 lead and how they were able to shut Edmonton down. And on the flip side, the Oilers having won these last 3 playoff matchups with the Kings have to come out of that game with a lot of confidence, even though they ultimately did not win game 1.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the Kings, got to play like they did in the first 2 periods, and the Oilers go back and say, well, we got to play like we did in the third and not play like we did in the first 2 periods. Yeah, there is a lot of good and bad to take out of these 2 things, and game 2 is going to be really interesting. Edmonton steal a win in LA. They don't have to, because they still, go home and have 2 games to even it up. But it would be a huge advantage for the Oilers if they can steal game 2.
Which will be played at Crypto.com Arena Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. So with that, we're going to move forward to Tuesday's games. And we can only hope that this night is as good as the one that we had just recapped. So let's go through each of them, give a couple of notes on what we expect, and I'm going to throw it over to you for Jersey and Carolina. Game 2 of that series, 6 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. This is kind of an odd start time configuration, which we'll go through as we run down these 4 games on Tuesday.
Yeah, and New Jersey, a huge problem for them in that Brendan Dillon and Luke Hughes are both not expected to be on their defense tonight in Raleigh.
How does Sheldon Keefe devise a plan to combat the relentless attack that that Carolina is going to come with? And they were able to bring it in game 1 with both of those defensemen in the lineup. Simon Nemec is no doubt going to draw in for New Jersey. But this is going to be his first game in this postseason. What do you do here if you're the Devils? I mean, to me, the only thing that you could do is try to get pucks behind Carolina's defense and try to push back and literally beat the Hurricanes at their game.
Yeah, you got to play by committee. Once you lose Luke Hughes and Jack Hughes and your toughest guy, Brendan Dillon. You got to play by committee. You got to, everybody's got the same hymn book in front of them, and you've got to weight your chances. You've got to talk about how Carolina plays. You've got to, it's getting chances here and there against Carolina, hoping that you guys can pick a hole to get the first goal. That's all you can do. You're not going to be able to replace Luke Hughes in this lineup. You can't replace Jack Hughes. You can't even replace Brendan Dillon and his physical force that he brings to the games. So it's going to be an uphill battle for New Jersey, but I'm sure Sheldon Keefe is saying, look, we got to do this together. We've all got to stick to our game plan and do it as a unit, we can't be individuals out there.
Jacob Markstrom was not bad in game one, but he's going to have to steal a game in Raleigh. The Devils are going to have any shot here.
Yeah, and that's going to be hard to do, Vic. I mean, with those many guys out of the lineup, I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see, no doubt.
At 7:30 on ESPN2, Ottawa plays in Toronto, and we're going to see what kind of lessons the Senators took out of the first game when they went shorthanded 6 times. The Maple Leafs scored 3 power play goals. And they're going to really have to keep their wits about them. Otherwise, this could be a short series.
I think it is going to be a shorter series. I think that Toronto has proven that they can play as physical as Ottawa wants, and they can outskill them at the same time. Their goaltending is good. I think Stolarz is better than Ullmark, or was at least in game one. It'll be interesting. Toronto would have to have a letdown, and Ottawa come up with something I didn't see in game one in order for them to even this up.
We're not going to erase 58 years of playoff drought in one game, but given how game one went and that the Leafs were able to be physical, maintain their discipline where the Senators didn't, is this a sign of what we can see continuing for Toronto?
I think so. I mean, there's no reason why it can't. But remember that they are playing Ottawa. It would be a different Toronto team had they got stuck in the 2-hole and had to play either Tampa or Florida. They are playing, the Ottawa Senators, who haven't been in the playoffs for a long, long time. So this is no doubt going to be I don't want to say weakest opponent, but the lowest standing opponent that they're going to play.
But Ottawa did beat them 3 times during the course of the regular season. And we had said on numerous shows that there's really no good opponent for the Maple Leafs in the first round, no less a provincial rival that supposedly had your number.
Well, no, absolutely. But they proved in game one. I think that game one was huge, the way Toronto played. I think it was huge. I think it set the tone for what we're going to see. And I have a lot of confidence in Toronto, but, let's see what Ottawa can bring.
As you had mentioned, the Maple Leafs were able to avoid the 2 Florida clubs in the opening round. And, oh, by the way, they're going to start their series finally on Tuesday, game 1, 8:30. On ESPN. That's an 8:30 Eastern start in Tampa. Matthew Tkachuk's status is to be determined after the Tuesday morning skate.
That's an 8:30 start. Can you imagine if these folks that are drinking outside or tailgating? Boy, oh boy, that'll be a raucous crowd in Tampa. Well, let's see if Matthew Tkachuk, he's a difference maker for sure if he can play. It's so bizarre that they're just starting. I mean, we're all into the playoffs. We're watching everything. There's 2 games completed in some series. And Florida, Tampa, don't forget them. They're going to start.
But this is a byproduct of some scheduling that really goes back to Easter Sunday, in that neither the Lightning nor the Hurricanes wanted that early 12:30 start on ESPN. And that's why there were only 3 games on Sunday.
I know. Yeah.
And so,
I know.
Right? So now this pushes into another window. And if you see ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN, and then ESPN again at 11 o'clock for Minnesota and Vegas. And this is all a trickle-down effect from the first couple of nights of scheduling.
So that's a 8 p.m. local start for the Vegas Golden Knights, which is kind of late. Usually it's a 7 or 7:30. So everything is contoured around television, and you're getting the ESPN override tonight.
Yes, you are. And Minnesota played very well in game one, and I think that they can take something into this second game with the Golden Knights. A little bit of news from around the league. Another coaching firing. Dan Bylsma dismissed as head coach of the Kraken after one season. Ron Francis moves from GM to club president, and assistant GM Jason Botterill takes over as full-time GM. By the way, assistant coach Jessica Campbell will be retained by the club. But what's going on in Seattle? I mean, they finished with a lower point total than they did the year before, and then they had let Dave Haxtell go. He could have done the same job staying on another year.
Yeah, instead of them having to pay him to not be there. And then I don't get the move of Ron Francis moving up to club president and assistant GM Jason Botterill taking over. I don't know. You have to ask Sam. I can't even speculate on what's going on.
Let's go to Vancouver for some more stuff. Canucks are not exercising the option on the final season of Rick Tocchet's contract. Instead, they are offering a bigger deal to try to keep him. And the team is also letting Brock Besser, their number one sniper, reach free agency, but they're open to a reunion, which I find a little bit bizarre, in that Besser has already said that he doesn't expect to return to the club.
Everything about this is bizarre. I mean, we just saw a coach get fired who won the President's Trophy last year and this year missed the playoffs. And now we're seeing a coach who did well last year and then this year missed the playoffs. And they're going to offer him a bigger deal to make sure he doesn't leave and go anywhere. He should talk to Peter Laviolette, who's, had his head cut off. And then your best player, or one of your arguably best players, Brock Besser, you're going to say, it's okay, we're going to let him reach free agency. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on with either of these Seattle or Vancouver situations. I can't even speculate.
Must be the water in the Pacific Northwest. You ready for this day in Stanley Cup history?
Ready to go.
Here we go. Two current NHL coaches, at least for now, are the principals in this Game 7 overtime thriller that took place on April 22nd, 2003. In the first playoff series ever for the Minnesota Wild, current Nashville head coach Andrew Brunette takes a little drop pass in the high slot, fakes to the backhand, and beats current Islanders head coach Patrick Waugh, who was playing for the Colorado Avalanche. It turns out it was Waugh's final game in the NHL as he retired 36 days after that.
Wow, that's a great this day in Stanley Cup playoff history.
Wait till tomorrow.
They only get better.
I don't know if they get better, but they certainly get different. That'll do it for our show for today. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, like us. Our website is NHLWraparound.com. And please check us out on X, where we are adding content frequently every single day. We will speak to you again on Wednesday.